In Sunday's sermon, we talked about the fact that no one has ever seen God, and that Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, has brought this invisible Father out for us to witness. And he says in many different places in John, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. So Jesus talks about these things, and the Gospel of John is predicated on the invisibility of God, the fact that the Father is not accessible to us. Question came in during the sermon. When John says no one has seen God, what about the many instances in the Old Testament, like when Jacob says he has seen God face to face? Very good question. There are visual expressions of God, specifically his glory, all over the Old Testament. And so we think of this manifestation of God's glory called the Shekinah. The Shekinah is it is bright, it is loud, stormy. At the center of it is darkness. It shines like a rainbow. It's clear as crystal. It's loud like a storm. It shakes like an earthquake. And the Shekinah glory of God shows up all over the Old Testament. What we have to realize about that glory is it's a created manifestation of who God is. It's a very changeable, dynamic animation of God's nature. And so we call it his glory. And so what happens when you see his glory? Well, if you're Ezekiel, you're comatose for several days. If you're Moses, up on the mountain of God and God is speaking, Moses says, I am frightened. I don't want to listen to this anymore. Again, if you're Moses and you ask to see God's glory, God is going to protect Moses from his glory so that Moses can only look as the glory is departing, because if he saw it head on, he would die. And this holds true in the New Testament, by the way. John the Apostle sees the risen, glorified Jesus in Revelation chapter 1, and he falls down as though dead. So the expression visually and sonically of the glory of God is a powerful thing, but it's not God himself. Think of Elijah on Mount Carmel. The earthquake comes, but God was not in the earthquake. And the fire comes and sweeps over the mountain. God was not in the fire. And I'm sorry, this is not Mount Carmel. This is Elijah, I think, back on Mount Sinai, actually. And so where is God? God comes in a still, small voice. Nothing visual, nothing impressive, just almost a whisper. And the still, small voice is scarier than all the rest of the stuff. No one has ever seen God himself in his essence. That is hidden from us. God is a spirit. He does not have a body. Now, this question refers us to Genesis and the incident where Jacob wrestles with God and realizes the next morning that he has seen God face to face. How do we understand this? Well, it actually coincides very nicely with the Gospel of John. This story is in Genesis chapter 32. It's from verses 22 to 32. And it's one of the famous stories in the Old Testament, Jacob wrestling with God. But I want you to notice just the way this story gets set up. Jacob is left alone verse 24, at this certain place beside a river, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. And so you have this wrestling match with what the story in Genesis calls a man. And what Jacob comes to realize in the course of wrestling with this man all night long, he comes to realize this is God himself in human form. And that ought to just set off alarm bells in your mind, or perhaps light bulbs should be going on, where we realize this is Jesus before his incarnation. This is Jesus in the Old Testament wrestling with Jacob, so that Jacob can't see God any more than Moses could, any more than Ezekiel could. But he can see the incarnate God, and he wrestles with this man, God in the flesh, the Word made flesh, and he wrestles with him all night and refuses to let go of Jesus until Jesus blesses him. That's why Jacob says at the close of this story, I've seen God face to face, yet I'm still alive. I was saved through this. It's a really perfect picture of the saving power of God in Jesus Christ, and it's actually a perfect instance of what the Gospel of John is describing. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as of the only begotten of the Father. We beheld him like Jacob, face to face. Look forward to seeing you again on Sunday.